What's up, everybody? You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
We're two guys who also happen to be pastors, doing our best to have open conversations about what it means to follow Jesus in today's world.
Hello. Welcome back to the world of Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James. I'm
Woo!
James.
I'm
That's
Mike.
Mike. Happy New Year, Mike.
Happy New Year, Jimmy boy.
How's it feel to be in 2026?
Look, it feels exciting. 2025 has had its challenges. It's had its ups and downs. It's
Yeah.
been quite a year, but 2026 holds a lot of promise, man. So I am very enthusiastic and excited about what this year holds.
I love that. That sounded like a Hallmark card. You said a lot without saying anything. And that's really the sweet spot of where we want to be.
That's where I try to be.
Yeah.
Like on a general basis.
Well, it's kind of your
Yeah.
aura, really.
I use words,
Yeah.
but there's no substance behind those
Not
words.
much
But people
lore.
don't know that
Yeah.
unless they take some time to
Yeah.
really listen to me. And so, that's it sounds impressive. It's actually, there's nothing to it. And I love that.
Yeah.
I really like that about myself.
It's all about the exterior, really, anyway.
100%. Yeah.
That's what I've gained from my time hanging out with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Mikey, what have you been up to lately?
Look, one thing that I've been doing lately is rediscovering my passion and my interest for music, right? And what that
Wow.
involves is, I'm actually in a band, James.
Are you?
I'm in a band.
How many people are in this band?
Two, but that counts. You only need more than one to be in a band, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a guitarist, and
Yeah.
then I am the vocalist, and I play some guitar as well.
Okay.
So we have performed at some open mic nights. We're starting small, and we have modest goals, right? I'd say within a couple of weeks, maybe a month, we want to take over all of Christchurch.
Okay.
So that's we're not trying to do too much.
Seems easy.
Yeah. We're trying to
Next
set,
stop.
smart goals, right? Realistic, measurable, achievable. Taking over Christchurch doesn't seem that hard.
I actually think that you're aiming too low, Mike.
You think?
I think within 2 to 3 months, we'll give you 3 months,
Okay.
right? Like 1/4 of a year. I think Coldplay should be opening for you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I like that. I like the way you think, and I think you're right. We have been limiting ourselves
Yeah,
by our very low standard goals.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You're not limited by your talent because talent is not really as important as the vision that you have
Yeah,
for where you want to be.
100%.
And I think Coldplay probably should be giving you a call anytime now.
Yeah. No, that's my expectation. And I'll be like absolutely devastated if it doesn't happen. But
Yeah.
thankfully, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
So I'm not going to have to go through that
It
painful
doesn't matter.
experience.
You just speak it into existence. Isn't that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, the more open mic nights we play, eventually word's going to get around.
Yeah.
And Coldplay will come to recognize us. We'll get a record deal. Within a few months, our legacy will be equivalent, or if even beyond that, of say U2 or the Rolling Stones, or
Sure.
some
Who,
of these.
who are they?
It's a great. Honestly, James, do you want to be our manager? Because I
I'm-
love the way you think. I really think the direction you could offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm down for managing. I
Yep.
feel like I'm managing your expectations already.
Yeah,
And
in
honestly,
the right way. Honestly, in the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. And Christchurch is known for being sort of a hub for musical artists up and coming. So
yeah.
really under the microscope here. But I think open mic nights, probably 3 or 4 more, and you should have that record deal.
You think that?
Yeah, I actually have not. Let me go on the record. I've never listened to them. I don't actually know how they sound.
Well, on that note, let me give a demonstration.
Would you like to?
I'd love to. So I'm going to sing because I know all of our listeners want this. Like literally every single one of them.
All 3 of them.
They've been crying out for this, and it's important to give the people what they want, right? So I'm going to sing for our many listeners out there. Maroon 5 Sunday Morning. You ready?
No.
Well, get ready.
Can I harmonize?
No, please
Okay.
don't. That would sound terrible. Perhaps even more terrible. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Sunday morning, rain is falling. Still some covers share some skin. Clouds are shrouding us in moments unforgettable. You twist to fit the mold that I am in. Woo!
And now
Can you clap or do something, please, to appreciate that?
we're going to just take a hard turn right into theology. Just no further comments. Time to start the episode.
Thank you guys for listening. Come to the next open mic night. See you there.
Follow Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James on Instagram to keep up with new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and to join in on the conversation. All right, Mike, for the listeners that are still with us after your attempts, your feeble attempts at serenading all of us.
Well, I mean, that's not very encouraging. You were just speaking in a very encouraging way as a potential band manager. Now you seem to have flipped the script. If anything, I would say we have more listeners now after that performance. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's not have this discussion now, right?
This isn't the time,
No.
nor the place.
There is a time and place, but it's not now.
So we wanted to talk today about this idea. I don't know, Mike, maybe you can give me some examples of if this has happened to you, or maybe you've even participated in it at some point, where we use really nice Christianese, churchianity, right?
Yeah,
we use great religious language in order to avoid what's really going on under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways that we can approach that, but I think we just wanted to address something that I think I've seen numerous times. In fact, I think I've kind of grown up in a culture where this happened a lot,
Okay.
where something really bad is happening, or a crisis is brewing, or internally we're not doing well, or maybe a relationship is falling apart, and we just resort to spiritual language to avoid sort of the pain and the challenge and the mess of whatever's actually happening in our lives. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like, I guess you'd call this spiritual bypassing, right?
Yeah.
So there's a real world situation, and that real world situation requires some kind of practical help or involvement or action. And instead of maybe doing those things, we kind of spiritualize the whole thing, and we refer to these kind of spiritual realities. We use, as you said, Christian sounding language to the detriment of the situation, because we don't actually take the action that's required or address or acknowledge the things that we need to in order to move forward.
Yeah, let me take some words from an expert, and by that expert I mean Google AI.
Okay.
Spiritual bypassing is using spiritual practices or beliefs to avoid, I think that's a key word, avoid difficult emotions, psychological wounds, and real-life problems, essentially shortcutting necessary inner work by focusing on the spiritual to sidestep the human. It's a defense mechanism where people overemphasize positivity, detachment, or enlightenment to escape pain. This leads to repressed feelings, unaddressed trauma, and unhealthy relationships, instead of being a truly spiritually and physically integrated individual. I see this a lot in our churches. In fact, we may have talked about this before, but I have found that some of the people as a pastor who have been the most difficult to work with, but also the most religious. They use a lot of religious language.
Yep.
They'll send Bible quotes all over the place. They'll talk about prayer. They're there every time the doors are open. But they're really difficult to work with oftentimes. And then what I found as I get to know them individually is that their inner lives and their family lives are often a wreck. And that's an example of what spiritual bypassing does. It's not that there's anything wrong, right? We believe that there's a necessary aspect, spiritual component to everything that we do.
Yeah.
But we can use all of this religious language and posturing to avoid the deep brokenness that comes with being a human being on this earth.
Yeah. No, as you're speaking, like, definitely I can think of, people that I've known and worked with who probably fit that description, and I see in myself as well. These patterns and these approaches. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, because I think I've got some opinions on this that people might find interesting, potentially a bit controversial, but they come from experience, and I do think that we need to talk about these things. Like, maybe should we get into potentially some examples of what this might sound like or what this might look like?
No, I think we should just pray about it and move on.
Yeah, no. Yeah, God will find
will
the way.
reveal it.
God will reveal it. Okay. So,
jump in. Give me a real life example that you're thinking of.
So I guess one example would be sometimes the phrase, "Yeah, but God's in control."
Okay.
Right, and that could that could be used in a whole variety of contexts, but let's say it's used in the context where somebody's life is imploding. There could be multiple things going on. There could be relationship breakdowns. There could be financial difficulties, whatever. and this person is just kind of saying, yeah, I mean, but you know what? God is in control. And maybe that's true, although at some point we might want to talk about this deterministic idea of God, the idea that God is in control of all things, which I don't think is actually scriptural.
Right. When we say God is in control, we can be thinking about very different things.
Yeah,
Everyone's got a different perspective of what that means.
Yeah. But I think sometimes that phrase is used to kind of justify a very passive approach to the things that may be going on in your life and the lives of others, right? Instead of actually taking action. And obviously there are things that happen that are outside of our control, but there's always a certain element, there's a certain level of things that are within our control. There are things that we can do. We can do work on ourselves. We can control what we can control, right? There are always a set of actions that we can take that do remain within our own volition, our own control. But if we use this idea of, well, God is in control, to justify a very passive approach and a very inactive approach, and to maybe get away from taking responsibility and taking accountability, that's where I think it becomes a little bit unhealthy.
Yeah, actually, as you're talking, I was thinking of this a little bit more of an obscure story from the Old Testament, but I really love it. I think it illustrates this pretty well.
Okay.
So Saul and Jonathan, his son, are with an army, and they are facing, I believe it was the Philistines, I'm not sure, one of their perpetual foes, right? But at the time, their foes had created a massive power dynamic imbalance. And to the point that there was, even though they had the army encamped around, a tree near the opposing army, they only had 2 swords in the entire camp because they weren't allowed to create any weapons of war. So they were honorary swords, right? So Saul and Jonathan were the only 2 who actually had these weapons. Saul, at the time, we might say wisely, decides, okay, this is not the time for battle, right? So he kind of just is chilling under the tree waiting for something to happen. Maybe saying some of these spiritual bypassing language. God is in control, right? But not actually doing anything about it. Jonathan, I imagine with his frontal lobe not fully developed, decides, okay, yeah, God's in control, so I'm going to do what I can do, right? I'm going to control what I can control and trust God to have the results. So I'm summarizing the story as quickly as I can, but he and his armor bearer just decide to go pick a fight, even though they literally can't do anything. And he creates this set of circumstances that make no sense and is totally reckless. But he actually climbs this cliff with his armor bearer, which means even the sword he did have was impossible to use as he's climbing. He gets to the top. They let him up there, these enemies, and then they start, kicking butt. And all of a sudden, God is in control, right? He creates a panic, and these 2 people create a rout of the enemy. And I think it's a good example of the difference between a passive spiritual bypassing. Like, this is a big, scary thing, big, scary decisions I have to make. I don't want to make them, so I'm going to say that God is in charge because that relieves me of the responsibility of having to make decisions, right? Versus Jonathan's perspective, which can be quite reckless at times, but it's taking risks and controlling our part and then letting God do the rest.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good story to use. And another phrase I think that would come to mind that could connect to that would be something like, I'm waiting on God to open the door. Yeah. Right? And it may be that person has explored every available avenue and done everything they could in this situation, and whatever the opportunity is has not come about. So they go, well, I've controlled what I can control, so I'll leave the rest up to God. But it may also be, and I can think of examples of this, where someone says, I'm waiting for God to open the door, and they haven't really done much about their own situation. They haven't tried to control what they can control and take action themselves. Yeah. And, that I like that story, because I do think that in so many cases, clarity comes from motion, right? When we take action, when we walk forward, when we try things, often a lot more clarity will come, as opposed to just waiting around for some blinding light to glow into our minds and give us the answer. Often it comes about by actually trying things and actually doing things. And maybe you'll fail, maybe it won't work out, but that in itself brings some clarity. Yeah. But if we're always saying, I'm just waiting for God to open the door, it's like, well, okay, but like, what have you done about the situation? Right? Are you just this passive speck in your life and in your situation? Because if so, I mean, God has given us the ability to take action. He's given us our own volition, and we should utilize that, right?
Yeah, I think Scripture's full of that example, right? Again, from the Old Testament, when God said, "Hey, everywhere your feet trod, I'm going to give this promised land to you." Basically, you have to walk it out. If you don't walk it out, I'm not giving it to you. And in the New Testament, when Jesus is telling some of his stories, and he's basically like, "I'm giving you these talents. What you do with those talents is your responsibility, and I'm going to hold you accountable for what
Yep.
you would do with those talents."
Yep.
So there's this consistent theme, and I think that many people, and I include myself in this, I don't want to come across as judgmental here, because this has been a big part of actually my inner work
Yeah.
for the last few years, is realizing how, for me, a lot of it was like trauma growing up, where I started thinking my life is completely out of my control, right? I don't have a voice. I don't have a choice. I have to do whatever happens to me and just respond to it and adjust to it, right? And so I've lived much of my life with that pattern, and I've spiritually bypassed it a lot. Like, instead of taking ownership of what I can do about my situation, what I've often done is said, well, God is in charge. This is what's happening. This is what's happening to me.
Yeah.
I don't really have a choice in it.
Yeah. Everything is happening to me.
And it sounds very holy.
Yeah.
But what it is it's a relief of responsibility for my own situation that I find myself in.
Yep.
And because of that, I have a spiritual reason for not being where I could be.
Yeah. I've got a theological justification
Theological justification. And
for essentially playing the victim,
yeah.
and so avoiding responsibility for the things that I should take responsibility for.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it comes from a place of being in, fight, flight, freeze. I think this is freeze mode. So we for whatever reason have told ourselves or been taught that, there's nothing you can do in your current situation. And so because of that, the most comfortable place you can be is to say, well, God's in charge of my situation. I can't do anything about it. So I'm just going to have to put up with whatever's happening. And there are times, right? There are times where much of what we have to do is discern what is in our control and what is out of our control.
Yeah, I think that in itself is an important skill.
And I think by doing that, that's the opposite of spiritual bypassing.
Yep.
Spiritual bypassing is saying, none of this is in my control.
Yep.
Or this is maybe turning a corner here, but another example of this is like if there's a lot of broken relationships in my life, saying, well, people don't like me because I'm really close to God, right? So I'm making these decisions that are very unpopular to them, and they hate me just like they hated Jesus. So we get this persecution complex.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So there may be a pattern, and you're the one at the center of the pattern.
Yeah.
But instead you go, well, it's all the other people.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
How do I end up connecting with these people all the time that just are so toxic? And it's like, but what's the common denominator here, mate?
Yeah. Everyone keeps separating themselves from me, and it must be because I have a closer walk with God and they can't handle that.
You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
I have really good friends.
Yep.
Kind of former friends, right? Who actually have been distancing themselves from everyone around them and then blaming everyone else.
Yeah, they
for not
alienate
being holy enough.
100%. They alienate people naturally by the things that they say, by the way that they interact, right? There's a lot of kind of red flags, like relational red flags there. And so when people naturally kind of distance themselves and go, I'm not sure if I want this person to be as close as they have been, then they feel persecuted. And they point the finger at the others without looking inward and going, what have I done? Have I done something here to actually cause this person to not want to be as close to me as they were?
That's it.
Right.
And then you can find all kinds of scriptures that you can pull out of context, right?
Yeah.
To justify why it seems like everybody around you is really frustrated with you, or why your close family. I see this a lot with some people who I love them to death, and it's so sad to see, right? But they might be older, and they're super, super religious, right? But their kids have cut off contact with them. And they can't always bear the actual reason why there's no contact between them and their adult children.
Yep.
And so there's a form of spiritual bypassing that happens. It's like, well, these people have fallen off the way.
Yep.
And they don't want anything to do with God, and because I'm close to God, they don't want anything to do with me.
Yep.
And that relieves people of the responsibility of actually inquiring, what have my actions, what have my words done to
100%.
possibly sever this relationship?
Yeah, so in that case, we might blame secularism, right? We might blame the big bad world.
Yeah,
because
the
it was just
agendas out there.
with all its allures and its attractions and all of that, it's just too powerful for my children or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But what, this is the thing, because often when we acknowledge the things we need to acknowledge about ourselves, it is deeply painful.
Yeah.
Because we realize the self-image that I have protected so carefully over the years
Yep.
is a bit of a facade. So what if the way that the children have been raised, right? Maybe the environment they were raised in and what was modeled to them was not very healthy.
What if I did make some mistakes?
What if I made some mistakes? And
they were big ones?
What if I made mistakes over a long period of time
Yeah.
and now I'm seeing the fruit of those
Very
mistakes?
harmful mistakes.
Right? That's, as painful as that is, if that is the case, if that is what actually happened, then obviously it needs to be acknowledged before any kind of relationship repairing can take place.
Well, you can't make changes until you acknowledge there's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think actually when we talk about, in our denomination, a lot of times you'll hear the law is the mirror, right? Pointing out all the areas you've fallen short, right? And then you go to Jesus and he's able to meet you where you lack. I tend to agree with that, but I think the law is not just like the 10 Commandments that we look at. It's actually, according to Scripture, it's the law of love, right?
Yeah.
And so if we really allow Scripture to do its work, it's going to point back all the areas in our heart where we have fallen short in the way that we have given and received love to ourselves, to the people around us, to God, whatever, right? That is very painful work, right? It's hard to have that type of mirror point back at you and say, hey, you truly have not really been a loving person to these people. You might have thought you did, but it wasn't actually that loving.
Yeah.
But that mirror pointed back at us is the starting point for a journey of actual inner work and transformation. Then we find out maybe some people are separating themselves from us, not because we were getting super close to God, but because we were using religion to avoid all of the toxicity and brokenness in our own hearts. And I think that leads to emotional maturity, which is a deep draw. Right? You can be super, super close to Jesus, and people can not believe in Jesus and still be drawn to hanging out with you and wanting to be around you.
Yeah, I would hope that is the case.
Exactly. So actually, spiritual bypassing is the opposite of true Christ-likeness.
Yeah.
But it sounds
so holy.
So
right?
holy.
It's another one of those religious sounding sort of covers that we use for issues that we're dealing with, right? And it's again, I think we haven't had a full conversation on this, but we have mentioned in the past this idea of religious addiction, or where religion is a great place to hide from real world issues.
Yeah.
Like, as much as we like to think that our Christianity is trying to address the core issues with humanity. Well, I think it is. Right, but also humans can co-opt that to make it a great hiding place, to hide away from our own internal issues and to get involved in things that really don't matter and that don't move the needle. Yeah. And the more religious and holy it sounds, the more convincing it is to other people and to ourselves.
Especially if it's really black and white religion, right? Where it's giving you very clear guidelines. For people who feel out of control in every other area of their life, right, this gives them the specifics needed to feel stable. Okay. Okay, to be a good person, I do this, this, and this, and I don't do this, 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 this. And it's usually a much longer list, right? And so in doing that, it actually removes the relationship component of Christianity, which is supposed to be the basis of it. And it just centers it on the do's and the don'ts.
Yep.
Feels very safe, feels inside the box. And what it does oftentimes is create places for you to hide from your true self. And I think that's why some of the worst things that have actually happened under the guise of Christianity and under the guise of religion.
Absolutely. Like things that get done in the darkness, right?
Yeah.
And, people have felt that there is freedom to do those things. And it's a great place to hide and whatever. But then they come out, and of course it's always shocking, and it destroys trust and safety. and causes others who may not be involved in religion to think, I don't want any part of that. Well, James, looking at the time, our time is drawing to an end. We have spoken in this episode fairly generally of these things. We've given a couple of examples, but I think in the next episode, the next conversation, we might be getting a little bit more specific. I know I've got some things that I want to talk about, but we appreciate all of you listening in. We're going to have a second part to this conversation, so tune in next time.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Lo-Fi Faith. If something resonated with you today, we'd love it if you shared the show with a friend.
You can catch up on past episodes at plains.org.nz and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be back with a fresh episode in 2 weeks.
See you then.